Like sometimes people will say, like, Jason, how you do all this? Like, how you not doing all this?
It kind of seems to me like you're having fun.
Yeah. Like, I tried the retire in the rock chair thing. I went batch crazy. Okay.
Let's see. Ooh, those are fly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm from Colorado, and it's giving Denver Broncos vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are actually my brand colors, so for Cavness HR.
Very nice. And these are the prototypes. And
Yeah.
you said maybe coming
next year, yeah.
2026?
Yeah. So once I'm going to Vietnam, I'm actually doing a tour factory to see where I want to have it made at.
Nice. Well, for folks who are curious, who are listening and or viewing, you'll have to maybe put some top secret JPEGs. Maybe you could unlock some early preview prototype things with joining your WeFunder. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So what do you have going on?
Ooh, what do we have going on? It's hard to believe September next week. So it's Q4 time, friends. It's the fourth quarter if you're running the calendar year. Halftime if you're on the June fiscal. But in any case, we're just thinking about Q4, finishing the year strong. You know, the weird thing about Q4, and you know this from working in HR, is that because of vacations and all of that, you really actually only have from like September and October. Because once you start getting into like mid-November, like, it's kind of game over for getting everybody's like signature workflow.
And for some people, it starts at Halloween, right?
It really does, right? And so that's kind of how I think about it. So when I say that like September is next week, because I'm an operationally focused person, and I think about what we need to get done, not just in the end of the year, but set ourselves up for 2026. I think about how we really actually just have September and October.
Yes.
That said, we are going to be at Seattle AI Week, WTIA. That's the end of October. So you folks check that out if you have events, if you want to see the speakers, all that good stuff. So I'll be there as part of their summit on October 28th. We also have the Tech Alliance, so the Technology Alliance here, they do an annual policy summit, and our Barclow Venture Studio is their partner this year. So you folks can save the date for mid-November. And we'd love to see folks there. So the policy summit is to help folks focus on these different emerging tech areas. The theme this year is quantum. Washington State is a bit behind the other 9 states, et cetera, in having a quantum and future tech initiative. But the Tech Alliance is doing this annual policy summit. Day 1 is going to be more of the policy economic focus, but Barclow during day 2, and we're very excited because this finally means that we're going to be able to do a larger scale event that's on par with the kind of stuff you see out of Chicago and Maryland and Colorado, New Mexico, because we're firm believers that even while Washington State is kind of figuring out its place in strategy, that doesn't mean that the innovators and thinkers, investors here shouldn't have an opportunity to have the same access that these other states and global regions have when it comes to brushing up on this topic, not just for quantum, but for future computing in general, and all of this infrastructure and security that's needed to support what's happening with data intelligence and AI.
So since I have you, I think what else you want to talk about? I want to take advantage of you being here.
What else should we talk about? Man, I feel like so much has happened since we did the episode I was on.
Yeah, I know, right?
Man.
And I think that comes out 2 weeks from now, actually, that episode.
Yeah, that's right. It comes out in 2 weeks. I think a lot of it in there is still evergreen, but there've been some really interesting things. I know you and I were at lunch just now talking about, people are talking about AI speculation, concerns about bubbles, mismatches between like perception and reality, and how much traction AI actually has in enterprise environment. I would love to hear from you. Do you find yourself competing with AI platforms and tools, the kind of stuff that startups pitching investors saying it's going to get rid of something like Cavness HR? Yeah. How much of that have you seen?
I actually think it's kind of advantage when people say that, because most small business owners, they're kind of old school, right? They're not going to trust some random tool. They still want a person, right?
Yeah. True.
I mean, I think example, you can obviously go to ChatGPT and Google how to fire someone, right?
Yeah.
But does it really have to do the nuances, right? Each situation is different, right? So I think it's a kind of advantage to me when people, they say only use tools, right? Because most people aren't going to want to just use tools. They want a person, like, give them like some balance, so to speak,
Yeah. For me, I am seeing some very interesting things around. So I should preface this by saying that I am a bit of a policy nerd, but I'm also a bit of an economics nerd. And I almost got my double major in economics at Ohio State, but I didn't want to stay there long enough to even do the minor. That said, I am seeing very interesting dynamics of game theory play out and like the perception and reality of what people are seeing with AI, but also like where they put their money, where they place their bets, and everything they need to happen to make good on that. So first, what I'll say is, please remember that we had the .com burst the same time that broadband was expanding. So this disconnect between like over speculation hype in one area of an innovation economy, like what happened with .com, we still have e-commerce, right? We got Amazon Prime 2-day shipping. So it wasn't that we weren't going to have e-commerce. It's that the speculation was living at that website pitch level and not at the infrastructure that required people to like, people needed that to even get on the internet in the first place, right? So I kind of am already seeing that. You can, if you go do your GPTs and Googles yourself, but you'll notice that folks like me who work in compute, infrastructure, data center, that kind of stuff, all of that stuff's expanding as people are starting to get very nervous about where they place their bets with AI. I think that kind of has a very interesting parallel to the .com burst. I think the other thing that's very interesting is that there's that MIT study that came out that made some waves about how so few of these AI pilots are actually making it into enterprise IT production. I find that very interesting because some sort of like, well, hold on. There's all this shadow AI going on, and people are using it at a consumer level. You know, they're burning up these GPT credits. Where I think that gets interesting from a game theory perspective is if you're one of these AI companies, these superstar one to watch 40 under 40, blah, blah, blah type startups, you didn't promise your investors the total addressable market of shadow AI and consumer AI. You promised them that you'd be able to replace business unit workers, that you'd be able to streamline operations. So all of that money that you raised, it was on the promise of being able to have these large scale kind of automation, rip and replace roadmaps in enterprise IT. So I say that to say that it will not be enough that these consumer apps and like, you know, lower price point AI solutions do well when a lot of this money was promised around enterprise IT and basically modernizing and renovating all these workflows. So that's actually a really big gap in price margin. That's a big gap in traction. And I'm not really sure how much you can have these smaller, lower price point AI sorts of tools versus like the really big subscription like SaaS bills for enterprise. I'm sure somebody could run the math on how much you would need to fill in that gap, but that's a pretty big gap. Last thing I'll say, since the last time we talked about with all this stuff, is this data center thing and the speculation around that real estate, critical minerals, there's a very big risk around some of this technical debt where people are looking to invest in data centers and materials that really assume we're always going to build data centers the same way. We now have aquatic data centers. We have orbital data center nodes launching and continuing to be launched this fall. So if you're somebody who's kind of late to the party, you're rushing in right now on like the standard data center model, I've been telling people you can't put a Hemi in an Oldsmobile. It's really difficult to try to retrofit or do more, bigger, harder, faster of a data center architecture type that obviously it just can't keep up with AI workloads. It was never designed to do that. So I do think that there's some real risk. McKinsey has a report out right now talking about misallocated capital, which I think is a very polite way of saying like don't be the dumb money, where you're speculating it's going to take you 2 to 3 years to get this stuff off the ground. And the same folks who have been working on modular data center solutions, modular energy power, et cetera, they might be having prototypes, traction, and sales, closing rounds for their raise in the next 2 to 3 years, right when people are trying to finally break ground on what they're spending millions on right now. McKinsey's calling it like a $7 trillion problem. So those are, I guess, my little updates from frontier tech and infrastructure and news and trends since the last time we went out.
So back to Cavness, a couple of things I forgot to say. Right? So like I said, a year ago, we did like an MVP minus, right? MVP minus, like we had some less intent. Of course, letter intent, you never know if they're going to really pay, not right.
Yeah.
So like, it does it count, did A/B beta test. All the people we talked to, like all of them said, hey, Jason, you're on the right path, but this isn't good enough for us to pay for, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason I'm raising a refund is because I need to raise money to pay for the developers, right? Mm-hmm. Even though Vietnam still costs money, right?
Yeah.
And some people are all, like get customers first, or like, why should I do the refunder to help raise the tech? I always say like, I have 100 people on. Everyone says they're going to buy, right? Maybe only 2. Like my flyer with the podcast, people don't know. I just don't have so many people who buy the product once it's ready for them, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we're raising the money to able to build a product out to do the sales.
Makes sense to me.
And I think we have a pretty good go-to-market plan, using the podcast, social media, different items like that. I'm a veteran, partners with veteran organizations. I have partners set up like so in Seattle for people in Seattle based on neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. There's Pioneer Square, Belltown, Capitol Hill. All these have their own small city business networks or chamber of commerce or partners, those kind of things too, right?
Yeah. Well, I also like your model that it kind of has like this, apart from LOIs, it's kind of like try before you buy sort of thing, which can really make a difference in helping people discover for themselves what kind of fit is there for what you have to offer.
Yeah. So let's talk about my tech event. Once again, thanks for being a judge there.
Yes.
What was your take on the tech event and the talent you seen there?
I really liked it. There was a lot of events going on Seattle Tech Week, and I couldn't clone myself to be at nearly as many of them as I wish to be at. But I really appreciated the range of the types of founders that you had there, a different kind of technology you had there. I'm always a big fan of folks who are thinking beyond enterprise apps. There was a lot of that. I think about Apple Technologies who won. I get excited about startup like them, not just because of like the tech itself in the market, but from a decentralized like healthcare perspective, we've never really had a solution like that could be mobilized.
And like how has that been happening yet, right?
Yeah.
Like how is this possible?
Yeah, I mean, because I think about, I used to work at Cardinal Health, and there'd be the community health centers, and I also did some nonprofit work and all of that. And when you think about Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, et cetera, you can have these health clinics, right, where you can administer vaccines, and you can basically kind of do like minute clinic type care, right, and places that don't really have access. Same thing with rural health deserts. Sadly, we're having more of those in the U.S. The thing that has always been missing has been imagery. So people could have growths, abscesses, even cancers and tumors in these different villages and communities for years, in some cases decades, and there would be no way to have that evaluated or imaged unless you were able to help that person get to like a larger city or a larger healthcare hub. And so that's what I was really excited about who won. I'm not saying that that's in their plan or anything like that, but just seeing that technology's out there in the world where people can have that decentralized imaging, that's not just solving a real healthcare system problem in America, that's solving a very real access to care problem for the world.
Yeah, when I first decided to just do the tech event, I'm like, okay, I'll do this tech event. I'll probably pick 5 starters, right? Then I got 55 applicants, right? And like, okay, so maybe 10, let me do 16, right? There's so many applicants, right? It's like insane. And there's so much good stuff going on here.
Yeah, the other thing I liked about it too, and I talked to you about this before, was like, that was kind of an event that was fun because you could be a secret shopper. If you have like a pitch contest or something like that, or even demo day, right? You don't get to kind of, we talked about kind of like an audition, right? A lot of trade shows, expos, conferences, it's going to be like the format you had. You're going to have a table, and people are going to have to mosey around. You're not going to get a stage and 5 minutes pitch and slot. You're not going to get that, right?